I am back in Derry City where I grew up, but left nearly 40 years ago. How has its recent turbulent history affected the landscape and its people? Rinanaile, the fort on the hill overlooking the city, was a magical visit as a child. I thought it was the home of the O'Donnells, my mother's antecedents, but it was actually their feudal rivals, the O'Neills, who lived here from the 4th to the 12th centuries, with its splendidly strategic panorama over the Foyle and Lough Swilly. The name Derry is derived from the old Gaelic word Derry, oakwood, and is the name most Irish people use for my city. It is the finest, most complete walled city in Ireland and widely regarded as one of the best in Europe. The walls stretch for approximately 1.5 kilometres and vary in width from 4 to 12 metres. When the city was besieged by the army of James II in 1689, the gates had been secured against the Jacobite forces by the apprentice boys of the city. The Guildhall is still the seat of local government and continues as a venue for cultural events and the performing arts. Bombed by the IRA in the 70s, it has been painstakingly restored. Derry was once a busy merchant navy and NATO port. With my grandfather, I used to watch the Scotch boat leave here for Glasgow with its cargo of cattle and those seeking work across the water. People were once Ireland's principal export, and even today the city is losing too many of its graduates and skilled workers. Craigavon Bridge was built in 1933, and just over 50 years later, the Foyle Bridge, linking the city to its natural hinterland in Donegal, was added. A major note of hope for the people of the city was struck in 1960 with the opening of Derry Credit Union, a financial cooperative owned and managed by local people. Nearly 50 years on, I find that it has granted £250 million in affordable loans to local people and has assets of £100 million sterling. That's wealth retained in the community. It has also given a boost to local commerce and encouraged investment, and more importantly, it has demonstrated to Derry people what could be achieved from their own resources with effective leadership. I met these German tourists in the walls and also encountered groups elsewhere in the city from the States, Japan and other parts of Europe. They will have a significant impact on the local economy. They will have learned about Governor Walker during the siege, Governor George Walker, and the unfortunate demise of his pillar at the hands of the IRA in much later times. The Bogside area is populated almost exclusively by Catholics, who as citizens were blatantly denied a wide spectrum of civil rights by the Unionist government. The guns always seemed to be pointing at them. This is where I went to school. Famed throughout the world as the only secondary school to number 2 Nobel Prize winners, Seamus Heaney, poet and writer, and John Hume, peace activist, among its past pupils, as well as many high-achieving individuals. Eamon McCann, writer and political activist, musicians Phil Coulter and Paul Brady, playwright Brian Friel, and Aston Villa manager Martin O'Neill, and for what it's worth, the only Irish school to have educated a future president of the Educational Institute of Scotland. This is the headquarters of the Apprentice Boys of Derry, which commemorates the shutting of the gates during the siege. and has 10,000 members in associations around the world. These Harlem High School students are learning about the siege and the effigy of Lundy, which will annually be marched through the streets and burned on the walls on December the 18th. The two cathedrals, St. Columb's Church of Ireland, built in 1633 inside the walled city, and the much more modern Catholic one, St. Eugene's, which dates from 1873. I see little physical change, though I'm told that the influence of bishops and the clergy on lay thinking has greatly diminished. St. Columb's Hall was once a great variety playhouse and picture house, where a young Frank Carson regularly upstaged local amateurs in the annual pantomimes. It's the way he tells them. Women have long played a crucial role in the city. They were the breadwinners, working in the factories where their husbands and sons signed on the dole. History can be a romantic place for young men, but proud Derry women have long grieved at the deaths of fathers, brothers, and sons. For nearly a year after the British Army became involved in the unrest in Northern Ireland, the Bogside area, for all practical purposes, functioned as a free state within the United Kingdom. It was governed by a Citizens' Defence Committee. I spoke to 77-year-old Fergie Skin McCarthy, who with his wife Bridie raised 18 children here during the worst of the Troubles. It was not easy. Normality with CS gas and rubber bullets, and the Brits spying on your every movement. What made Bloody Sunday different from all the other atrocities in the eyes of Derry people was that they saw it as state-sanctioned murder, a decision taken at the highest levels in Westminster for the army to fire on unarmed British civilians marching in their own community. The killing fields are now a tourist site. There is a mood of optimism in the city now that the guns are silent, and in both traditions there are sincere people of goodwill, anxious to put the past behind them. Seamus Heaney, in his poem Double Take, wrote, "History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. So hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge. Believe in miracles and cures and healing wells."